Welcome to Inside View. I'm your host, Sarah Lunsford, and today I have Rebecca Turner with me, who is the elections coordinator, amongst many other titles. So I'm going to let you kind of explain what other titles you hold over there at the county offices.
I'm currently the Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters.
Okay.
I've been the election coordinator for several years, and in 2015, I was elected to be the Clerk Recorder, which oversees the elections office.
Okay. So what brought you into this position?
What brought me into this position? I started with the county when I was 17.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. I started as a student intern, and when I graduated, they asked if I wanted to stay on, and I did, and I stayed on, and I've been there since. So I've worked in the clerk's office and the recorder's office, for the clerk to the board.
Okay. So
elections,
Did you grow up here in Calaveras County?
I didn't grow up here. I was born here in San Andreas, actually, which is kind of funny. And I moved away. I lived in Spokane, Washington for about 10 years, and I moved back for my senior year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you did an internship.
And I did an internship with the county.
And then they hired you on.
Then they hired me on, and there I've been.
Wow, okay. Yep. So as far as your position now, you kind of came up through the ranks learning everything from kind of the clerk recorders before you. And did you ever aspire to have an elected position?
To be honest, at the time, my boss was Karen Varney, and I really looked up to her. And in my head, as soon as I met her and I worked with her, it was like, one day I want to be like that.
Oh, okay.
And so I did. So that, more than anything, even more than the position, probably was like, I really like her. I want to be like her.
Okay.
So I worked towards that. I went to school to gear my education towards clerk recorder, which means like your municipal clerk certificate, which takes so much, and just general business administration too, because that was my goal, my end goal.
Okay, so you had a good mentor.
I did. I had a very good mentor.
Yes, you did. So as far as elections coordinator, what exactly do you do in that part of your job?
I am not the elections coordinator.
Oh, sorry.
I have an elections coordinator that works under me. But with the elections, we do voter registration, and that's year-round. And this time of year, like right now, we're working on our logic and accuracy, so that means we're testing the voting equipment currently. That's what I left the office. We are working on and checking the coding. Which means we're basically running a mock election right now to make sure everything is counting accurately and that the coding for the equipment is reading the ballots correctly. So we're running those through and checking reports, and then we'll lock the machines up, and they'll be locked up and secured until election day after we...
Okay, so nobody can access them after you do the mock trial then.
Exactly.
Now, do you use the ballots that are going to be used in the different districts for the mock? Okay,
we use very similar ballots that have, we've coded with a test so that we know how the results should run. So they've been, we basically mark the ballots as our test deck, and we mark them so that we know all the results come back out. So it should be something like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way down the ballot, so we know what it. So we know that it's counting accurately because that's how we marked them, and then we've got a proof that it does come out with that. So
so let's say that it doesn't come out correctly. Do you have to have a technician come out and look at the ballot boxes to
either
calibrate
the
them?
coding was not correct, or something we did when we did the ballot layout wasn't correct.
Okay.
So we'd go back through first to make sure the way we marked them was accurate, obviously, to match back up, and then we'd look at the coding to see if we told the machine to count it the way they should be counting.
So you sort of reimagine what you did and then just put it through again.
Right, to make sure everything's correct. So if, say one of the candidates should have gotten 3 votes, which it would be higher than that, but 3 for this purpose, and it only had 0, but we thought they should have had 3. We know that the coding is not either the ballot's timing mark down the side, the ballots all have timing marks, either the oval isn't lined up correct, or the actual coding doesn't have the candidate in there, or it could be a number of things. So we'll go through those to see if that rarely happens. We usually have it right because we proved it a lot beforehand, but this is just the final because it would be terrible to find out.
That it's not
real
working
election.
quite. Yes, exactly. So that's why it's super important for people to fill in the little bubbles correctly.
Yes, definitely fill in the bubbles correctly because that's how it counts your vote.
Okay. So how many people are actually registered to vote in Calaveras County?
28,000, actually
Okay.
28,159 as of today.
Okay. So it's a little over, well, it's what about 2/3, a little over 50% of the population. If we have a 40,000
So if
population,
you consider 40,000, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, in your experience, because you actually have a lot of experience in this arena, in your experience, is that a high number of registered voters?
We go through trends. So
Okay.
usually a presidential election, the registration will go up. So
Okay.
2016 primary, we were at 29.5, so
Oh, wow.
29,500.
Okay.
But it's a very typical to trend up for a presidential and then go back down for a governor's election. So.
Okay. Now, it seems like with the recall elections and the supervisory elections and the district elections that your department has been more busy in recent years than maybe in years prior. Are you finding that that's the case?
This last year, we've had a number of yes.
Okay.
Even petitions, it had been at least 10 years since we'd had a local and voters-based initiative go on the ballot. So
really?
even that was
Wow.
new for us.
So everything local runs through your office, the local propositions by local groups for our local county.
Even the state ones come through our office.
Oh, they do? Okay.
If the signers are Calaveras County residents, they come through our office and we verify those as well.
Okay.
So
you must have a lot of people behind the scenes.
there are technically 2.5 election staff.
Oh,
So-
that's all.
2.5 people are doing this, yes.
And with the recall elections, and I'm kind of hedging towards them because we still have 2 out there, right?
Yep.
And those require special elections if they don't fall on a general election, don't they?
So the Gary Mindy recall, if it would have gone through, would have had a special election because of
Okay.
the way the timing hit.
Yes.
But the Mills and Toffanelli recalls, if they're submitted on the date due, we really will be able to consolidate them with the November, so there won't be a special election.
Okay, so it all depends on the dates.
It's the timing. So as soon
Okay.
as it's approved by the Board of Supervisors, they have between 88 and 130 days to put it on an election. So if we can consolidate it, we definitely do. But
Okay.
it's not always an option.
Okay, so with those 2, actually, if they fall in line, if they get enough signatures, how many signatures do they need?
Dennis Mills recall requires 1,555, and
Okay.
it's due June 6th.
Okay,
And then the Toffanelli is 1,396, and it's
Okay.
due June 28th.
and those are district specific, right?
Yes, so it's 25% of the registered voters in that district. That's why
Okay.
they vary.
Okay, so should those actually go through, you'll try to align them with the general election then?
Most definitely.
Okay.
If it's possible, we will.
Because it's expensive. It costs the county money to have these elections.
Yes.
And that doesn't come out of the pockets of the people who are kind of forcing the recalls.
No, it's the county at the county's expense.
Okay. So is there a pot set aside, like in your budget, a line item for special elections, or where does
If
that
we
money come
had to have
from?
a special election, it would mean we have to go back to the board to request additional funds. We usually try to budget specific to
Okay, to the
what-
elections you know you're going to have.
that are planned, yes.
Okay.
So-
Now, how much does it cost the county to have just a regular election?
It depends if it's an all-mail election or if we have to open the
Okay.
polling places. So an all-mail election is less money.
Okay.
So I was estimating if we had to have an August special election, it was going to be between $20,000 and $30,000. But
So it's a lot.
it is a lot, and that's an all-mail.
Oh, it is an all-mail.
Yes.
So there's no polling places.
If it's so there's certain dates that
Yes.
you can have that can be all-mail elections, in the August is an all-mail date.
So who sets those dates that
The-
can be all-mail?
The state, it's
Oh, they
state
do.
code.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if it's an all-mail election, it's still 20 to 30,000. You said. Okay. And so what does that money encompass?
What does it encompass? Staff time. It's potentially extra staff time. And then for an August, we're right in the middle of a June and November primary, so it means we
Okay.
are potentially working overtime to conduct that election in addition to our regularly scheduled elections. So staff time, the ballots themselves can be very expensive.
Okay.
We have to code the ballots so that the machines can read them, and that costs money.
Yes.
The ballot paper itself is very expensive. It has to be,
Okay.
it's set aside special paper
Okay.
for printing ballots. So we got the,
So does your office actually code the machines?
we send the coding to another vendor who
Okay.
actually puts it in. So we send them the information based off of what we have to a vendor to code.
Okay.
And then they're actually doing the laying it out on the ballot so that it reads
Okay.
correctly, because it's very,
Okay.
so they have to lay it out, and then we send it to a printer to print it
To
from
print it
that.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's worth mentioning that every special district and every sort of supervisorial district, they have different ballots depending on what's on the ballot,
Yes.
which sounds really weird, but each of those, you could potentially have maybe how many different ballots for all of Calaveras County? Let's say we have like many district elections.
Okay, so for this June, we only have 6 ballot types.
Okay.
One is the Angels Camp has a special measure, so they have a special ballot type for theirs. And then the supervisor districts, if
Yeah,
they have a
each of them are
supervisor on the
separate,
ballot.
yeah.
And then we actually have 2 county-wide races, the assessor and the sheriff.
Yeah.
And they're, the candidates' names have to be rotated by district, so that impacts the ballot types as well.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, so anytime we have a
Okay.
county-wide race. We do the same thing for assembly districts across the state. They have to be rotated through the
Okay.
state. So this, we're going to have 6. For November, we're going to have the special districts on
Yes.
So we could have as many as 45 ballot types.
So 45 ballot types for a small county in rural California.
Yeah,
And each of those are coded differently.
yeah,
So, and you only have 2.5 people working in your office
Yes.
on elections.
yes.
So, okay. So, I mean, and I point this out because during election season, you guys are there like all the time. You might as well bring your beds in and sleep
Sometimes,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. So, how long does it take to actually count all those ballots? Let's say for like the November election, which is like huge.
So we start running the ballots themselves a week before the election. So the vote by mails that are turned in, we start running them. We don't tabulate the results, so we have no idea what's actually
Yeah, what's in them? Yeah.
in them. But we start running them ahead of time, and so we start a week ahead of time.
Okay.
And we probably spend 4 to 6 hours a day, somebody running ballots in that time
Okay.
span. And I mean, because there's more to just running the ballots as well when you start
Okay.
opening them. And then election day, we try to get all the ballots that were turned in by 8 p.m., vote by mails,
Okay.
in that first count. So when we
Okay.
run our first reports at 8:30, that's usually all the vote by mails that were turned into our office by 8 p.m. that same day.
Okay. So that's when you start seeing the precincts come in after that.
After that is when we start doing precincts.
Okay.
And then we usually do precinct results as they come in. So it usually takes them anywhere from an hour to 3 hours for everyone to come in.
So are they counting the ballots at the precincts, or are they just
They're-
closing everything up and coming to your office?
We've done it both ways.
Okay.
We send machines out, and assuming the machine's functioning and everything, they're running the ballots throughout the day. The voters are putting it in themselves.
Okay.
And then it's tabulating the results. Just nobody knows what it is until
Yeah.
it comes back to our office.
Okay.
So
So should there be some issue with a car, maybe a flat tire or something, sometimes that's why it takes so long for a precinct to come in.
yes.
Sometimes.
Yes. And I
Okay.
mean, some of them, they're coming from West Point,
Yeah.
from Arnold. So some of them have almost an hour drive time
Yeah. Just to get
in the
to
dark.
the government center.
Just
Yeah.
to get to government center in the first place.
So who actually is out there working the precincts then?
Poll workers.
Poll workers.
So they are amazing. So they're working a 16-hour day. They've
Okay.
had very little training. So they do an amazing job considering what little resources they really have.
Okay.
But to be honest, we could use a lot more this election.
Okay.
We are short in the Valley Springs area, which is highly unusual. Usually they're
that
filled.
is.
So I don't know if everybody's going on vacation in June, but we could really use some help in the Valley Springs and Murphy's.
And these are volunteer positions?
They're volunteers, but they get paid a stipend.
Okay.
So it's $85 plus training if you attend training, and then your mileage included to attending the training classes.
Okay.
So it's not a lot of money,
but it's something. Now, how many people do you usually have at each polling place then?
By law, we're required to have 3.
Okay.
We staff 5, and that being, if you're working 16 hours, people need to take breaks.
Yes,
and the majority of the poll workers have to be at the present at all times.
Oh, they do?
So
okay.
If you have less than 5, it's very difficult to let anybody go take a lunch or a break at all.
Okay. So you try to staff at 5, but in a pinch, you do 3.
In a pinch, there could be 3. So we would never just staff 3, though. It's like we staff 5, and then if somebody doesn't show up, and we try to keep people on hands, too. If somebody doesn't show up, we can put somebody else in that position. Yeah.
Okay. So how many polling places are there?
Countywide, there's 15.
Okay.
So
and do those move around at all?
Not usually. Every once in a while, we'll have a change. We try to keep it consistent so voters know where they're supposed to go.
Okay. Okay. Now, have you noticed that there's a change in people utilizing the mail-in ballots in recent years as opposed to going into the polling places?
When I started in the office, I just remember the goal for everyone was we just want to get that 50% for vote by mails. And now we're at 67% for vote by mails that permanently are vote by mail. And then any given election, the voters who request a one-time vote by mail usually brings our rates up to more like 75%.
So a lot of people are staying at home and voting now.
Yes, a lot of people are voting from home.
So then how do you make sure the person who's voting is the person who's actually, that's the ballot that you get, if you understand that question?
That we're
verifying the person and the ballot together.
Okay, so when the envelopes come back, everyone's required to sign, and their voter registration has that same signature. So when they come back, we verify each one of those signatures to verify, to see that it belongs to the right person. So sometimes we'll see a husband and wife signed each other's or something like that. So we'll contact them, and if signatures are too far off, we usually will send a letter and say, this doesn't look like it was your signature. We need you to re-register. And assuming they can do that within the time frame, we still count their ballot.
Okay. So that's part of that process that starts the week before then.
We start that because ballots will go out ballots go out Monday, May 7th. So they should be in people's mailboxes by the 9th or 10th. And we start as soon as we start receiving them, verifying.
Oh,
so
you
it's
do?
30 days ahead of time we're verifying.
So you're verifying and then setting aside and then starting to open them to count them later.
Yes.
Okay. And all of this is done by human beings?
By human beings, yes. Yes. Some counties have some fancy voting equipment that actually verifies the signature accuracy rate. They'll set it to like 10%. So if it matches 90%, and then human beings will check the last 10%. But so we recently just sent 2 of our staff members to a signature verification class too, where they were certified to be signature verifiers.
Oh, okay.
The individual who teaches the class, I took the class myself a few years ago, is a DA, or not a DA, FBI signature verifier, basically, and he puts on the class about how to check for certain things if we have the slants and everything else of a signature to match it back.
So it's very detailed.
It is very detailed.
Okay.
And any ones that are like somebody puts aside as unsure, we go back to those, like if they get in. So basically we do the same thing the machine says. If they're that far off, they go back and somebody separately is then going back through and checking them again.
Okay. So the incidence or the actually even availability of voter fraud would be very small, I would imagine, since you're going through all these processes even before the vote is counted. Okay. And have you noticed that the regulation for voter verification or even just registration through the years has gotten more strict?
Yes. When I first started, they didn't even require driver's license on registration cards, and since then that was one of my first tasks, was to start collecting driver's license information and putting it back into our system.
Okay.
And also, just the technology has changed, which helps a lot. When I first started, we were going back to the actual registration cards and proofing.
Okay.
And so now it's all scanned in the system, and you can proof it rather easily. So
okay, so it's
a big difference.
Become computer centric.
Yeah.
Not just data entry, but you need to actually know how to operate the computer and what it does. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So are you finding with these special elections that you're getting a high number of people wanting to participate in them, the recall elections in particular?
No, not really, actually. We see not particular.
Okay.
It's not, I don't know if a recall some people tend to not vote, even if they're not aware of what's going on.
Okay.
We have higher voter participation when the president's on the ballot.
Yeah.
So for local elections, we have, when we just have local elections on the ballot, our voter registration has been as low as 50% or less. And, to be honest, Calaveras County has high.
Compared to other counties,
Compared
it does.
to other counties,
yes.
So I think that it's because the smaller we are, the more people realize that that voting on local government is important. So the closer knit communities seem to have a higher voter turnout.
Now, is that the same like throughout California, you've noticed?
I don't study throughout California stats. I do like to see where we stand compared to other counties, but the larger the county is, the lower the voter registrations and actual voting turnout seems to be.
And then do you notice the same people are voting from election to election? Generally, or I guess you wouldn't even notice that. You just kind of
we wouldn't
process.
See who. We wouldn't see who it is.
Okay.
I mean, when somebody votes, it shows whether or not they voted in a certain election or not.
Okay.
But we don't see, in general, looking at anything. If they voted.
Yeah,
before.
I wasn't sure what kind of data sets you had to like kind of drill down.
So it does, because when we're logging those, when we're verifying the signatures, it's logging whether or not that person is voting in that election, and it's tracking it so they can't vote again in the same election. And it is there in the stats. We just don't necessarily look into it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there's somebody out there collecting it. And
so if somebody wanted to volunteer at one of the polling places, how would they do that?
They want to do that, they could contact our office and we'll mail them a form. They could come into our office, or we have the form online on our website.
Okay.
And you just print it out and fill it out and turn it back into us.
Okay.
We also have a Facebook page recently, and we're trying to post updates as often as we can on there.
Okay.
We're also looking for other forms of communication for communicating with the public. So I just noticed that I personally, if I need help somewhere, the last thing I want to do is pick up the phone and ask somebody. So if there's an alternate method of doing that, I think that's easier. So we're trying to be more accessible, basically. So if you don't want to call us, write us a message and we'll respond to that.
And they can email you through the county's website?
Yeah, the county's main website has an email, and it also has a link to our Facebook page.
Okay, and then they can message you on Facebook?
They can message us on Facebook.
Okay.
We monitor it regularly, so if anybody sends a message, we'll respond.
Okay.
That way as well.
That was another question I was going to ask you, is as sort of the younger voters are coming up, and the way they communicate is very, very different, obviously, than some of our senior citizen voters, and we do have a large proportion of senior citizens in our county. How do you bridge that gap between communicating with the electorate?
That is where we find it very difficult, and that's where we're trying to reach out in different ways. Ideally, I'd love to even have a text message center where somebody could text us and we'd respond. But we still do the common. We're answering the phones. Everybody in my office still answers their phone. We don't let it go to voicemail if at all possible. And we're still doing the newspaper publications. If there's something going on, we try to publish it, or media releases. But it is that younger group that we're trying to engage and get involved.
So are you finding the younger group is actually voting? Or you,
I think it's.
have you looked at it? I guess
No,
I
I
should
don't
say.
look at it regularly, but I
Okay.
did notice the last time I did look at stats, not too long ago,
Mm-hmm.
that the younger generation, it is increasing to what it
Okay.
was, but obviously the.
Yeah, we're, what, about a 60 to 70% senior citizen population in our county.
So-
So it's going to be a little skewed anyway.
Yeah, and
So, okay.
it's significantly higher.
Yeah.
So, as far as voter turnout or registration.
Okay. So they can get in touch with you. Now, what are you called on Facebook?
It's at Calaveras County Clerk Recorder. So
Okay,
if
so
you
it's the
look up
Clerk Recorder.
Calaveras County Clerk Recorder,
Okay.
you'll find our page.
Okay. And then just really quickly, because we're almost out of time,
Okay.
what else do you do in your office?
So I have 5 departments. The county clerk, which does the marriage licenses, fictitious business name, DBAs.
Okay.
The recorder's office, which records all vital records and land records. So if you transfer property or buy a piece of property, those recordings would come through our office. The
Okay.
Register of Voters, which we've been talking about.
Yes.
Archives is actually under my office too, so it's really cool. It's downtown Main
is.
Street.
Oh, okay.
So you can check out the old archived books and official records
And
there.
there's a lot in the archive.
Yes, and I am the ex officio clerk to the board as well. So,
Okay.
Clerk
So
board
when you're
minutes.
ex officio clerk to the board,
in virtue of being the county clerk, I'm automatically the clerk to the board.
okay.
So-
Okay. So you keep track of their agendas and minutes
Yes.
and all of that?
Yes.
Okay. So is the video on demand portion of the Board of Supervisors meetings under your department then?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
if you're having issues, you can contact us. But we're really working on trying to make that streaming because we like that the video's live. I
Okay.
think it's a great way to get information about
Out there.
what's going on in our county.
Okay.
One last thing, so we don't get lost. I also wanted to remind everybody that this election, there's going to be 2 ballot cards. So to
Okay.
make sure they're voting both ballot cards and
So why are there
returning the
2?
vote. Basically, the state contests are so large. I don't.
Okay.
Since top 2, we no longer nominate state offices by parties.
Yes.
And so
It's really long.
the list of candidates, I think state senator has over 30.
Okay. All right.
And with it being top 2, it's the top 2 vote getters that move on to the general
general
election,
election.
not necessarily one from each party.
Exactly. Okay. So 2 ballots.
2
Everybody fill them out
Everybody fill them out.
when they send them back in.
Yep.
Or when they go to the polling places.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay. Well, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
on
It was
Inside
nice.
View.
Yeah.
And thank you for viewing our program. Remember, you can contact the Clerk Recorder on their Facebook page. You can contact us on our Facebook page, and we're almost out of time, so I'm going to say have a good evening.